Nitrates are a class of cardiovascular drugs that include nitroglycerin, isosorbide mononitrate, isosorbide dinitrate, amongst others. Nitrates are often used clinically to treat hypertension and angina. In this mnemonic video, I'll cover everything you need to know about nitrates, so you'll be ready for test day. Let's get started. Nothing's better than starting the day off right with some coffee. That's why we're here at my favorite coffee shop, known for its delicious Nitro Stout. Since Nitro Stouts and brews are all the rage in the coffee world nowadays, this Nitro Stout is our symbol for nitrates. Get it? Nitro for nitrates? Now that we've anchored ourselves to these drugs, let's take a moment to learn some of the drug names for the nitrates. For one, we can use this nitro brew to also cue us into the nitrate ending of some of the other nitro drugs. These include isosorbide dinitrate and isosorbide mononitrate. We didn't symbolize these separately because it's pretty obvious that these are nitrate drugs by their nitrate endings. Next, on dreary mornings, who wouldn't want to jazz up their cup of coffee? This shop keeps edible glitter for customers to sprinkle all over their drinks. This glitter should help you remember nitroglycerin, because glitter sounds like glycerin, right? And you can put that glitter right on top of the nitro brew for some nitroglycerin. You feel? Nitroglycerin, or NTG, is the primary nitrate drug that you'll need to remember for test day. Now that we've learned the nitrate drug names, let's talk more about how these drugs work. Uh-oh, one of our customers has slipped on the floor. We'll get back to why he slipped later. But notice how he accidentally bumped into the nitro tap, knocking free a rusty canister of nitrogen gas used to infuse the coffee? This rusty nitro tank should remind you of nitric oxide. You know, since nitro should remind you of nitric, and rust should remind you of oxide, since rust is just a form of oxidation, right? Together, the rusty nitro tank should help you remember that nitrates are converted into nitric oxide in the body. This nitric oxide is a potent dilator of blood vessels, which we'll get back to later. Let's move on to our next symbol to learn how nitric oxide causes vasodilation. The rusty nitro canister also knocked over some candle packets being sold at the counter. You know how coffee shops always sell sweets and stuff at the counter. And these aren't just any candies. No. They are my favorite. Sweet and chewy gumdrops. Let these gumdrops remind you that the effects of nitric oxide are mediated by cyclic GMP, or cGMP. Get it? Gumdrop for GMP? Nitric oxide enters the smooth muscle cells of vessels and increases the production of cGMP. This causes the vascular smooth muscles to relax, overall leading to vasodilation. So, to recap, nitrates cause an increase in nitric oxide, which increases cGMP production in vascular smooth muscle cells, which causes vasodilation. Got that? But what caused all this commotion in the first place? Turn your attention to the water dispenser in the back. The customer accidentally left the cold or blue water tap open, spilling water everywhere. He must have slipped on the huge puddle on the floor. By the way, this open blue tap really reminds me of the venodilatory effects of nitrates, because dilation causes vessels to open, right? Then, since only the cold water or blue-colored tap is open, you should remember that nitrates preferentially cause vasodilation in the veins. We've just explained how nitrates increase nitrous oxide and cGMP-mediated vasodilation. But the mechanism for the preferential vasodilation of veins is unclear. As a bonus, the giant pool of water on the floor can help you remember that this venous dilation results in a pooling of blood in the veins. This reduces the venous return to the heart, decreasing preload. Despite the preference for nitrates on veins, super high doses of nitrates can also affect the arteries to cause arterial dilation. In general, I would remember that nitrates preferentially dilate the veins. Got that? Now that we've covered the mechanism of these drugs, let's learn about their clinical uses. For that, turn back to the nitrogen canister. Since it's been broken off of the nitro tap, it's releasing its pressurized gas everywhere. This venting canister makes me think of decreasing blood pressure, since the release of gas is just a reduction in its pressure, right? As we just described, nitrates cause smooth muscle relaxation, decreasing vascular resistance in the veins to lower preload and cardiac output, which then lowers blood pressure. This is why nitrates are often used in the treatment of hypertension. In particular, nitroglycerin can also be used in high doses intravenously to treat hypertensive emergencies, defined by elevated blood pressure with evidence of organ damage. In very high doses, nitrates dilate both the veins and the arteries, which leads to reduced preload from before, but also reduced afterload from arterial dilation. However, nitroprusside is generally preferred over traditional nitrates in this context, as nitroprusside is a balanced arterial and venous dilator, meaning that it takes lower doses of nitroprusside than nitrates to get the same effect. I would watch our dedicated video on nitroprusside to learn more about that drug. For now, just remember that nitrates can be used to treat hypertension. The barista is so shocked by the slipping customer that she actually looks like she has developed chest pain. Look how tightly she's clutching her chest in horror. Let this barista remind you that nitrates are used to treat angina pectoris and myocardial infarction. In particular, sublingual nitrates like sublingual nitroglycerin are used first line for symptomatic relief of chest pain. Nitrates help here by causing vasodilation of coronary arteries, which increases blood flow to the myocardium. Nitrates also decrease preload, thereby lowering the workload of the heart. All of these are related to vasodilation, which we've already covered at length. So let's move on. Finally, nitrates may be used to treat pulmonary edema. Since nitrates cause a reduction in preload, this decreases venous return to the heart and reduces the amount of blood that might get congested in the lungs in someone with heart failure. I see this as a derivative and less important effect that is related to nitrates' reduction of preload. Now that we've gone over some of the clinical uses of nitrates, let's move on to their adverse effects. Despite all the commotion, you can definitely say that this man is a very loyal customer. He's even holding onto a loyalty punch card for the coffee shop. You know, the buy 9 coffees, get the next one free kind of program you always see at coffee shops. This loyalty card is our recurring symbol for tolerance. Nitrates can cause tolerance or dependence with continued usage through mechanisms that are still under research. This tolerance can cause a condition known as Monday disease, discovered in the industrial settings by workers using nitroglycerin as an explosive. Throughout the week, workers developed a tolerance to nitrates, which were subsequently lost over the weekend. Then, when the workers arrived back to work on Mondays, they experienced symptoms like reflex tachycardia, dizziness, and headaches as a result of re-exposure. To avoid the symptoms of tolerance in patients, a nitrate-free interval each day is required, along with a preset dosing schedule. During this nitrate-free interval, patients may experience rebound angina, so using an additional anti-anginal therapy during this time is recommended. Since nitrates induce vasodilation, they can also dilate the vessels in the head and skin, leading to side effects like headaches and flushing. Finally, nitrates can cause reflex tachycardia, which is basically a compensatory increase in heart rate in response to a decrease in blood pressure. We didn't symbolize these side effects since, 1, they're not that important or specific, and 2, they can be pretty easily reasoned through from our mechanism. You should let physiology be your best mnemonic, eh? We're almost done. Before we go, let's touch on some scenarios where the use of nitrates is contraindicated. Firstly, we've learned how these drugs can be used to lower blood pressure. However, this effect can be compounded if nitrates are taken along with PDE5 inhibitors. You see, PDE5 inhibitors like sildenafil are often used to treat erectile dysfunction, and they work by preventing the breakdown of cGMP in cells. Then, with nitrates, the combined effect of increased cGMP production and inhibited cGMP degradation can cause severe hypotension and even shock. This is why nitrates are absolutely contraindicated in patients taking PDE5 inhibitors. Secondly, Nitrates should not be taken by patients with preload-dependent conditions. These are conditions like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and right ventricular myocardial infarction, where preload, or good filling of the heart, is mandatory to maintain adequate cardiac output. As we've learned, nitrates preferentially dilate veins, causing pooling of blood in veins and a major decrease in preload. This can lead to fatal decreases in cardiac output and cardiogenic shock in these patients. All right, that's it for nitrates. Let's summarize what we've learned. Nitrates are a class of drugs that include nitroglycerin, isosorbide dinitrate, and isosorbide mononitrate. Nitrates work by inducing vasodilation by way of increasing nitric oxide and cGMP levels, which in turn cause the relaxation of smooth muscle. Importantly, nitrates preferentially dilate veins over arteries. Clinically, nitrates are used to treat hypertension and angina. However, tolerance to nitrates can develop, so patients should follow a rigid dosing schedule with nitrate-free intervals. Other possible adverse effects include reflex tachycardias, headaches, and flushing. Finally, nitrates are absolutely contraindicated in patients taking PDE5 inhibitors, or in patients with preload-dependent conditions, as use in these patients can lead to fatal hypotension and shock. All right, now we're done for real with the nitrates. We better see if that customer is okay and clean up, so we can get back to studying Pixar Eyes videos. See you in the next video!